There we go.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kate, for joining us. So Kate has 18 years of experience working as a naturopath. She specialises in so many different areas, and today we are going to be talking about, as I said, hormone imbalances and any other sort of topics that we can dive into. I do encourage you to post any questions that come up into the chat group, and after about half an hour, we will get to those questions and answer them. Kate and I will stick around and answer some of those questions. So we've created a number of different questions that are relevant. So it will be more of a conversational presentation where I'll get to ask Kate any questions and any questions that you might have as well once you start to see the topics rolling on. But thank you so much for joining us, Kate. We'll get started. And firstly, I wanted you to share a little bit about yourself in terms of why did you decide to become a naturopath?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've actually been a naturopath for over 21 years. So, and somewhere you might have read that it says 18, but it hasn't been changed. Anyway, I just thought I'd update that. So it's over 21 years. I actually studied naturopathy when I was 29, I think it was. I'm now in my 50s, and back then I was in my 20s doing fashion design, costume design, making hats. I always wanted to do something very creative, but it just occurred to me that I wanted to help people in some way. And that didn't seem like it was helping people. It sort of is. I know creativity. I'm not saying that that's not great. But anyway, and I had my own health issues in my 20s that doctors didn't help me with. But I saw some really great naturopaths that helped me really quickly. And I was just blown away. I just couldn't believe how quickly my health improved and I understood what was going on. And it's also amazing
how well you can feel as well, I think.
Yeah. And I suppose, that's actually true, because doctors actually just said to me, and look, there's some great doctors out there, but remember this is like 30 years ago. So, and doctors out there just really sort of didn't have any answers, and they gave you these, you just said, take this, take that, and that's it. You have to deal with it. So I had digestive issues and some hormone issues and thyroid and adrenal. And so, I was pretty much the naturopaths told me I had chronic fatigue. I would call myself borderline chronic fatigue because I could still function, but I was just exhausted all the time. And yeah, that really led me to see naturopaths. And I think I saw about 2 or 3 in that sort of period. I think maybe it was my early to mid 20s. And yeah, all of them helped me to some extent. And yeah, I was really blown away. And I suppose I always knew that that was partly my passion. It was just hidden somewhere, I think. It needed time to come out, and it's life experience and that sort of thing as well, because I studied with lots of 18, 19-year-olds which were out of college, out of school straight away. And I think, when I studied, I was 29, 30, I had a bit of life experience, and that also helped. And so I was really excited to do that. And as soon as I started studying, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. And I now specialize in women. Sorry, I was just going to say I now specialize in women's health, because pretty much 80% of my clients are women. Online, they're all women. I actually consult in a clinic as well, and I do see some men and some children, but majority of women.
And so that's why I'm going to dive right into the first question, because we did say about feeling fab over 40, and I turned 40 a number of years ago now. And there was a significant change in my body. And I've been in the industry for over 25 years myself. And the thing is that I didn't think that it would happen to me. Like, I was listening to all the women over 40, even getting close to 40 and definitely in the 50s, talking about the extra weight gain. And I just didn't think it was going to happen to me. And I'm still a fine person, but there was a significant difference in my shape and the way that I was carrying body fat and how much body fat I was carrying. So my first question I'm going to dive into, because I know a lot of our members struggle with this, and a lot of women of this same age group, is why does that middle age spread happen? And then I'm going to ask you a question about what can we do about it outside of just pure exercise. So let's dive into that one. So I think that's a big one, and just some of that weight gain that does occur as a result of getting into those ages.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, depends when you go through perimenopause or premenopause, but around age 40, which is probably what you experience, and it can happen a bit earlier or it can happen a bit later. the hormones obviously change quite dramatically. So what happens is progesterone drops and we become what we call estrogen dominant. Has anybody heard of that term? I hope you have, because that's something that a lot of women nowadays are, and it's a relevance to what the estrogen and the progesterone used to be closer together. And as soon as the progesterone drops, and I'll explain that in a moment, you automatically become estrogen dominant, and you can become more estrogen dominant if you're overweight already, because your fat cells produce estrogen. You can also become more estrogen dominant if your liver is not functioning efficiently, if you have too many toxins and chemicals in your life, if you're eating too many foods that contain hormones, and they still do, no matter what you're told. There's loads that are, particularly dairy products and meat that's not grass-fed or organic. And, you know, there's some of it's in our water as well. It's not completely all filtered out. But then we, you know, if we get exposed to toxins, our hormones, we produce these things called xenoestrogens, which mimic our estrogen, and that automatically makes us estrogen dominant. So when we're estrogen dominant, that actually increases weight gain. It means we have more inflammation. Inflammation increases cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and that automatically over time will actually increase particularly belly fat, but your body to store fat when your cortisol is high. And it can also be that people don't change their diet. They look at, okay, my metabolism's slowing down. I do need less calories than I did when I was younger. My body is different. And so we've got to listen to those changes. And people continue eating the processed foods and carbohydrates in the amount that they were eating when they were younger. So they put on weight as well. Stress can be part of it. I think sometimes as we age, stress can actually play a big part, because even the stress of thinking, oh, I'm going to go through perimenopause or menopause, that could be a stress. And there's been loads of stress, I know, in the last year around the world, everywhere. And that, you know, can just be compounding on top of all everybody's stress that they have anyway in life, because life is not stress-free, is it? We just have to face that. But stress increases this hormone called cortisol as well, which again makes us store more fat on the body.
So that's interesting. So sorry, I'm just going to interrupt there, because you've said like about 3 or 4 different things that automatically are not only allowing our bodies to gain more weight at this time, but also probably making it harder for us to shift to that weight that is outside of just not having enough willpower, which, you know, a lot of the times we think that we're not motivated enough and that sort of thing. So, I mean, even that impact of those toxins, estrogen, that's a big thing that I think that I don't even really connect that for our members a lot as well. So that was a really good reminder. And as you said, that mimicking of that estrogen and then that connection with cortisol. So there's quite a number of things actually happening that are sort of coordinating against us, isn't it? That's fascinating.
There is, and I know, so it's not just a simple answer. And most women deal with all of it, because it's just, you know, accumulation of all these. But what happens too when you're estrogen dominant and when you have too much of these xenoestrogens, which are the ones that are caused by toxins in our environment, that they also affect the liver. But when you're estrogen dominant, that suppresses your your thyroid hormone production. So the other thing is, it's really bigly, I was going to say bigly, I'm really sorry about that. Make myself laugh. Hugely misdiagnosed is underactive thyroid issues. And now this can just be mildly underactive, and doctors just don't test properly, or even if they do and they look at your levels, they just see that as a be all and end all. So you just got to remember that if you have your thyroid hormones tested, firstly, that's a snapshot in time. That one day your hormones can be completely different to what they are tomorrow or next week. And the other thing is that generally in Australia, they only test TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, and the doctors sort of won't write on your referral slip, you know, to actually test the hormones. So you're missing out on the actual hormones, and your TSH can seem normal. This TSH is a hormone produced by the pituitary gland, which is a gland in your brain, and that responds to your thyroid hormones. And through perimenopause and menopause and past that, what happens with the change in the hormones is that our brain hormones also get a bit, I shouldn't say messed up, but they get a bit imbalanced. And that affects the glands in the brain, like the pituitary, the pineal and the hypothalamus. And so the pituitary, what happens is the pituitary gland does not respond correctly like it used to when you were younger, the way it should when your thyroid hormones are low, so your TSH can look normal. And I see it time and time again. I've seen it.
That gland's not responding properly. So what does that mean for us in our day-to-day lives? Like, what does that actually do for us?
Yes. So our thyroid gland, it regulates your metabolism. So that helps you burn fat, and that helps you produce energy. So you've got energy. It helps regulate your immune system function and your growth and your renewal of cells. It actually helps regulate your sleep as well. So some women that have sleep problems, it's a lot to do with cortisol and the lack of progesterone if you're having sleeping issues. But a lot of women tend to also have it underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, what we call subclinical hypothyroidism, where if the thyroid is under functioning, that can affect the progesterone levels in your body, and it can slow down your digestive system, and it can increase inflammation in your body, because if we're not digesting foods, that increases inflammation. If we're not detoxifying efficiently, that increases inflammation. And 80% of our thyroid hormones.
Yeah, and then that would add back to the stress, wouldn't it? The stress of your body.
Yes. So when I talk about stress, I mean, stress comes in many forms, and that can be inflammation. It can be stress from toxins. It can be allergies that you're not aware of, like you might be eating dairy products or avocado or tomato. I'm just pulling that out, but it could be something healthy that you don't realize your body's reacting to. Or maybe there's just ongoing stress from being too busy or worrying too much. That can be a stress. So all of these stresses will increase cortisol and inflammation, and it can not only cause that weight gain, but it can also slow down the body's processes, including the adrenal glands, which produce your fight and flight hormones and your stress hormones, but also your thyroid. And I just want to tell loads of people that they need to get their thyroid checked, even if you think, oh, it might not be an issue, but it's such a common thing. It's even happened to me a few times since I've been about 35, and I know that I'm prone to it. I don't particularly put on loads of weight, but some women do. Probably the first sign is that you get quite tired, and you might start getting dry skin, fuzzy, foggy thinking, or just you can't concentrate. Some people have really different symptoms. You can just get something that is not very worrying, but I sort of started to lose the outer edge of my eyebrows. So that can be a sign. Thinning of the eyebrows, eyelashes, thinning of hair, dry skin, low libido, sleep issues, like I said, constipation and changes in your digestive system. That can be definitely thyroid related. And I've seen clients that have had that all of their lives and they've never really been diagnosed, because it's not bad enough to doctors to put them on a thyroid medication or a thyroid hormone. But it's enough. Yes, it's just enough to give them symptoms. And as naturopaths, we treat that naturally. So I will always look at, how we can support the body naturally so they don't ever have to get on thyroid hormones.
And that's definitely something that I've seen. So I've worked with naturopaths myself personally, and you're, as practitioners, you are always looking at lower levels. So we don't want things to get to that point where they're very difficult to treat. You want to catch them before, when they're sort of affecting us in this lower level. So there's lots of different hormones, and I think this is why sometimes as the average person, it can feel like, wow, there's too many, like which one do I start with? Is it thyroid? Is it what? Like there is so much information. So what can we do? What are some tips, or what are some of the big things that that women of our age group and that may be struggling with weight gain and just feel a little bit stuck? What are some of the top things that you would recommend that actually do make a difference?
Okay, so you need to look at probably a few, if I just said, say 3 most important things. The stress side of it is really important. If you are looking to go through perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, or just through the rest of your life without symptoms, we can't, like I said, get rid of stress, but we can firstly help our body adapt to it. We can change our perception around it. We might say to ourselves all the time, I feel stressed, or I'm overwhelmed, or have a negative view about it. And it can be all around us. But you've got the choice to respond to it differently. So that's part of it, responding differently to stress and not letting it internally affect you.
I'm just going to keep jumping in with questions. So is part of that managing that stress also that the other levels of stress that we were talking about as well, sort of the stress from toxins and things in our environment? Is that another area that you'd recommend people address?
Yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. And if you get any sort of joint aches or pains or just feel achy or, especially perhaps you may not, because obviously all you ladies exercise, you might not recover as well after exercise, or you feel like your muscles don't have the strength, then that can be a sign of inflammation, or even something like low testosterone, because testosterone can actually, decrease over the age of 40 as well. And then you'll find that you lose muscle, you lose energy, you lose libido. And that's why, the strength training is obviously, it's more important. But yes, stress will actually deplete all of our hormones. And what happens as a good sign, I'm saying a good sign, you'll say, what? Doctors will always freak out about your cholesterol starts to go up when you age, but it's actually a sign that you need more hormones. So your body is trying to adjust to the decreasing hormones, and you will produce more cholesterol for your body to produce the hormones. So all our hormones are produced from cholesterol, and then it gets turned into the mother hormone called pregnenolone, and that pregnenolone can get changed into cortisol, which is our stress hormone. That's where it will go first. Then it can get changed into progesterone. And so if our body needs more cortisol because of stress and inflammation, it's going to favor the production of cortisol over progesterone. So that will be depleted. And then the estrogen can stay high. Well, it's just dominant anyway because you're low in progesterone. But our estrogen are good. Well, we've got 3 types of estrogen. Sorry, I know this sounds a bit confusing, but our good estrogen gets depleted too when there's stress and inflammation in the body. And it's not just as easy as saying, okay, just get rid of stress and reduce inflammation. We've got to look at other areas it comes from. So I tend to say, okay, you've got to have a good diet, less stress, and look at your digestive health, because a lot of inflammation also comes from how you digest foods, and foods that are in the intestines that are fermenting or not being broken down efficiently, or you're reacting to. So looking at diet-wise, I then would say try and get rid of your processed foods as much as you can. You're hopefully all aware that carbs aren't as great for us as we age, and have the healthier versions of carbs.
Just as a quick jump in, what would that be?
So I was just going to say, wheat is inflammatory, and I think one of the biggest things that people can do is reduce inflammatory foods like dairy, wheat, alcohol, caffeine, and processed foods. And if you are going to have some processed foods and some carbs, so you do wheat-free if you can, because wheat not only is hard to digest because of the way it's been genetically modified and hybridized and changed over the years, our body doesn't recognize it anymore, the protein in the wheat. So it actually increases inflammation. Now, some people say, oh, I'm all right with wheat. Well, yeah, it depends how much you have. Yeah. Some people are asymptomatic and they don't get symptoms, or they don't find it really obvious, but it can be something just like, ongoing inflammation that you're not aware of. Your joints might hurt a bit more. You might feel depressed the next day when you have a binge on pasta or bread the day before. So you look at spelt, perhaps the grains like spelt, rye, barley, oats, they're better than wheat. They're all gluten-containing grains, but they're better for you. Brown rice over white rice. Basmati rice is low glycemic index and better for you, but brown rice is even better because it's got more fibre. You might look at the seeds instead of grains. So quinoa and buckwheat, they're great because they're seeds, and teff. I've had a teff a little bit today, and that's a seed also. And they're high in protein. And I think one of the things you can do is have more protein in your diet as well.
Yeah, teff is an interesting seed that I come across about a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
It's a seed that, just for our members watching, Coles were selling it at one point in time, and I don't know if they still are in their health food section, but you can basically put it through a food processor and use it as a flour as well, can't you?
Yeah, that's what I did today. Yeah, that's exactly what I did today. I'd use millet, which is a seed, millet meal and teff, and I used them as a flour with grated zucchini, and I call them pancakes, but they're more like fritters. So I love doing that because you can have them for breakfast or lunch, and it's something healthy that you're not having. You feel like you're having carbs, but you're not.
Yeah,
Like, you know, it's like pancakes, but it's not really. Yeah, so teff is wonderful, ladies. You can get it in flour and in the seed. So you can cook it like quinoa, but it's smaller seed than quinoa. And it's meant to be 100 times higher in protein than any other seed or grain, apparently, or something like that.
And if they can't find it at Coles, because that's the only place I did see it, then health food shops will definitely have it. But it's really, I'm going to get you to expand a little bit more on just our requirements of carbohydrate decreasing as we go down. Why is that?
Sorry, why you need to reduce carbohydrates?
Why do you need less carbohydrates?
Yeah, because our body doesn't, so carbohydrates mean, as soon as you eat carbohydrates, and that includes, you know, rice, pasta, cereals, bread, and sugar of any kind, and most processed foods are really high in carbohydrates. Our body needs to release the hormone insulin, and that's produced by the pancreas, to utilize this glucose that's released from the carbs. So all the carbohydrate foods release a lot of glucose quickly into the bloodstream. And for us to use that glucose, we can't just sort of use it straight away. We need this hormone insulin. And the more we have that glucose from the carbs running through our system, the more insulin we have, and we have to pump out insulin. And if it happens over a lifetime, and it does, because we have to eat these foods and we always have to produce insulin. But if we have too many carbs and you're doing it for too long, over time, our body becomes resistant to this insulin. And it just happens because we live longer. So it's going to always happen about over the age 35, 40. Sometimes some people are lucky that it happens later. But because we live longer, I suppose our body is still trying to adapt. And, you know, especially with all the processed foods that people have nowadays, and the fact that, you know, a lot of people are carbaholics sometimes. Yeah. So we have to produce more and more of this insulin, and our cells in our body responds differently as we age. It actually becomes insulin resistant. And that's when we put on the belly fat. When we become insulin resistant, it can be because of the high cortisol, which will increase this circulating insulin and glucose. But it also will, so we become insulin resistant. It will mean that we store glucose as body fat rather than using it as energy, because that insulin is produced to unlock glucose as energy. So we can use it as energy, we burn it up. If our bodies don't respond appropriately to insulin, and we can't unlock that glucose for energy, it will just be stored as fat. And what happens as we age, it goes around the belly mainly. It can happen anywhere, but a sign that you're getting insulin resistant is that middle-age spread that people dread.
But how can people, outside of visually looking for that, how would you know that that's happening to you? Is there a test for that?
Insulin resistance or insulin resistance. Yes, and this is the other thing. A lot of doctors just test glucose. You might do a blood panel and they put glucose in there, and it's usually fasting. You need to test insulin as well. But you can also look at like symptoms that you might have as well. So blood tests can be, a sign. You can do a glucose glucose tolerance test. That can give you an idea, but that's when you have to drink a lot of glucose, and over 4 or 6 hours they test your insulin and your glucose levels and make sure they respond appropriately. It's not very nice. I hardly ever recommend people do that, because I don't think anybody needs to drink a whole heap of glucose. Most people feel sick.
Yeah.
So, you look at body signs, and I think if you're starting to put on that weight, or you feel tired after meals, especially if you have too many carbs and you feel like you want to go to sleep, or you just feel like you're hungry all the time and never really are satiated, then that can be a sign that you're not breaking down your food and not getting glucose from your food appropriately. And a lot of women tend to always want sugar after each meal. Oh, I've got to go for the sugar because, my body's not breaking down that glucose and, using it as energy. So your body just immediately needs more glucose, and you go for the sugary thing.
Oh, wow. So you've said to us that we need to reduce stress levels to manage some of these hormones because it affects us so much, and variety sources of stress. You've talked about improving the diet, reducing processed foods, and eliminating some of those high inflammatory foods such as coffee, alcohol, wheat, and dairy. And then the third thing that you mentioned was about digestive health and having good digestive health. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, so firstly, you need to have at least one bowel movement a day, so we get rid of the food, or the byproducts of the food, and the toxins that we accumulate over a day. And if you're not having at least one bowel movement a day, then toxins will build up, and these estrogen metabolites, or the bad estrogens, will build up in your body too. And in our intestines, there's something called a microbiome, which a lot of people are talking about now. I'm sure some of you have heard about the microbiome. There's a body microbiome, but there's a gut microbiome. And that microbiome is good and bad bacteria, you know, and the good bacteria actually helps us control our hormones, including not just our estrogen and progesterone, but our serotonin and our dopamine. And our serotonin is our happy hormone and helps us produce our melatonin for sleep. So if your gut health's not great and your digestive health's not great, or you don't even know that is, and you've got an imbalance in the intestinal bacteria or this microbiome, then you may not sleep well because you're not producing enough serotonin to begin with to be formed into melatonin at night time and released from your pineal gland. And dope,
that cycle, doesn't it? Like we can angles together to cause a situation in this time in our lives that explains a lot, really.
Yeah, it does. And then if you don't sleep, this is the thing, like if that happens, so up to 80% of our serotonin is produced in the gut, but it acts on the brain. If we don't sleep, then we become more inflamed. So if you are having sleeping problems, I always say address your sleep. And you can do that in loads of ways. Most people are magnesium deficient, which will help with your blood sugar levels, with your sleep, with feeling less stressed and anxious and overwhelmed. It will support many energy processes in your body as well. So that's something that you can also add, you know, to get you to sleep a bit more deeper, or at least a little bit better than you are. Because if you don't sleep, then you become more inflamed, because overnight hormones balance, our cells regenerate in our body, but we actually also detoxify. Our liver and our kidneys work really hard overnight to detoxify. If we're not sleeping, we're waking up lots, we're not getting enough, then we won't detoxify efficiently, and that will cause that compounding effect as well. So you have more toxins build up in the body, in the gut, and you just feel worse. It gives you lots of more symptoms, and that will cause you to then have less sleep because you're more inflamed, and that puts all your hormones out, and it does become compounding. So I always look at people, the gut health and the sleep and the stress are probably really big issues to begin with, and your diet. I suppose that's 4 things, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the sleep, but you've sort of captured that amongst all of it. And I think what's really, really interesting is just watching you talk. Like, I know we're all a bit boggled by all the terminology, but what I can see really clearly is that it's like you're reading a script of science about this is just how it works. And I think a lot of the people that I work with over the years, and we obviously work with exercise, and I talk about healthy lifestyle habits a lot, but the reality is that, you know, the sleep, as you said, the stress, the diet, those basic things is where it all is, you know, and we're trying to out-train our diets or our bad habits, or we're trying to do so much and in our lives, and, you know, I'm one of those people, but I just think that, like, it can be quite simple simple in terms of watching you speak about. It just makes such sense why that equals that when you add it to that. So I think what's really been highlighted is addressing the real issues. If we really want to feel better and we do want to shift that weight, then we need to start addressing these real core issues rather than trying to find Band-Aid sort of fixes through diets or, you know, exercising more, because sometimes that isn't the solution, is what I can hear from you today. So I think that was really valuable. We've sort of come onto the half hour. I'm going to open up if anyone has got specific questions of anything that Kate has said, and we're going to continue to chit chat while I look for those questions if anyone does have any. Now's a really good time while we've got Kate. So no, that was really valuable, and I think the last question that I have of you is, firstly, if I were to come and see you, firstly, how would I get a hold of you if anyone does want to have a chat further? But also, just typically, like, if there's so many different areas and I came to you with issues with weight gain, and yeah, my sleep's a bit off, and I'm tired. Like, where do you start with me? Like, I'm thinking I wouldn't even know what to do. Like, what would you do with me?
Yeah, look, okay, the first things I address, I assess whether there's some, I talk about the gut health a lot. We need to address the stress and the gut health. So I start by looking, okay, at diet and what's happening in your life, and adding a few supplements, or sometimes, I know this sounds funny, taking out a few supplements, because some people come along to me and they've got a whole box of stuff, and they're like, I don't know, I feel all right, but I'm taking 25 things, and it's superfluous, I like to say, because it's overload. And I tried to narrow it down, and I do that in the clinic and online when I work with ladies as well. Some tests might be a good idea as well. Sometimes if we're a bit boggled, I can get people to get sent off a test. What I do particularly though, and lots of naturopaths do, is do salivary hormones, because it shows what's happening at a tissue level rather than just what the hormones are circulating in your blood, which can change from moment to moment. And we're looking a bit deeper with salivary hormones. So you do have to pay for them. They're a bit more expensive than, if you had to, sometimes you have to pay for they're about $20 a hormone for excess blood tests that you might have through your GP. Say if you ask for reverse T3 or homocysteine or something that normally isn't asked for, they'll say, oh, you have to pay for that. So you do also have to pay for salivary hormones, but that's also very valuable in some cases. But most of the time, I ask women about all their symptoms, and after 21 years, what's happening. You really do. You could like, oh yeah, you've got estrogen dominance, or if you're menopausal or low in postmenopause, your estrogen's dramatically dropped, but your progesterone has as well, and your testosterone has, and your cortisol might have dropped by then, and you just feel exhausted all the time, and you feel the opposite than you did in perimenopause, and things are changing, and we can look at, okay, well, I look at people's blood tests as well that they've had, and we generally, I suppose I'm going around in circles, but we do start with, I make that assessment first and go really in depth with what is actually happening. I don't just skim over the top. And then look at the diet and look at the digestive health, because there's a huge gut and hormone connection as well. And I was saying before about the microbiome, but there's something called the estrobolome as well, or the Americans call it the estrobolome, but to me that sounds wrong. So I call it the estrobolome. And what that is another set of bacteria in your intestines that control your estrogen. And if it's not a healthy level, then you can end up with estrogen dominance to the point that you're more prone to estrogen or estrogen dependent cancers. So if you want to look at, reducing your predisposition to cancers and things like that, that's why we have to look at the gut health. The gut health controls so much in our body that if we just didn't address that, that would be silly. That's obviously what doctors and other medical practitioners don't look at when it comes to hormones. They sort of just look at one little thing, but it's a whole connection. So yeah, I would start probably there, diet and gut health, and looking at blood tests, and perhaps suggesting some, or just assessing the person and saying, okay, well, this is from your symptoms, this is really what's happening.
Excellent. I've got a question that's come through from Kiralee, and it says, is sourdough okay as a carb, as more easily digestible, even though it's wheat-based?
Yeah, sourdough is, because it's actually one of the old grains that hasn't been, genetically modified and hybridized like all the others. As long as you're not wheat intolerant altogether, or gluten intolerant, then yeah, that's fine. It's still, it's still processed. So if you're having bread, don't just think, well, okay, it's sourdough, I can have more of it. Still limit it. And we sort of say, if you're, feeling like you have that insulin resistance and you're putting on belly weight, then you try and keep your carbs to about 30. Oh yes, not your carbs, but your simple carbohydrates, I should say. So your bread, rice, pasta, cereal, including sourdough, rye bread, to 30 grams a day, which would be, equivalent to 2 slices. You can do that twice a day if you have to, but I wouldn't say to have 2 slices of bread twice a day. You might have some oats in the morning.
Yeah,
just
equivalent ones.
And then maybe have 2 slices of sourdough at lunch, and then try not to have carbs in the evening or something like that. Yeah, so I'm not against sourdough as long as people know that they don't have something like leaky gut, or they haven't got any gut issues at all and they're quite got okay there, then it's probably fine.
Yeah, perfect. Are there any other questions coming through that anybody has? We'll just wait while we just keep talking. How do we get a hold of you, Kate, if we want to see you again?
Yeah, ladies. So I have a website. I gave you the links, I think, at some stage.
Members
So
page.
yes, I have a website. You can, there's a contact button right at the top. And obviously, if you're somewhere else in Australia, you can see me in clinic. I'm in South Australia at Glenelg South. So there is a booking link up the top, or you can just contact me and ask me a question. You can find me on Facebook. I'm just called Kate Driver Naturopath. I'm Kate Driver Naturopath and Women's Health Coach, but on Facebook, I'm Kate Driver Naturopath. So you're quite welcome to just message me there. Have a look at my Facebook profile and business page. But also I've got a Facebook group, which is called Over 40 and Fabulous. If anybody would like to join, I give tips and tricks there. Usually Monday night, like right now, I'd be doing a Facebook Live in that group.
That one yesterday, didn't you?
Sorry?
You popped in and did it last night instead.
I did it last night. Yeah, so I usually do it on Monday nights. And I post there every day, just some tips and answer questions if anybody needs to. So you're quite welcome to join there. You can also email me. You can ring me even. I can share my phone number even if you do have a question or a query or you're not sure how you can work with me, because I have online programs as well as consults, and I can, consult obviously if you're in South Australia. So they're the ways. And I have some freebies if you want to check me out a bit more and see what I have to offer.
So I've got one more question because no other questions have come through. Everyone's fantastic. But one question that I do have is because I think I know there's, again, a lot of people that I work with, it can be quite deflating, feeling like you've tried everything and it doesn't work. Do you see big changes in women when they start to make the changes, and how quickly do these changes happen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, some women don't even really know what's causing it, so they don't know where to start. So, like I said, they come in with boxes of things and supplements they're taking and strict diets that they've been doing. And, so basically, oh, sorry, what was the question?
The question was
terrible. I got sidetracked.
That's okay. So it was just about, do you see women changing?
Oh, to the changes, that's right. How quickly do they change? Sorry, I just got sidetracked talking about the boxes of supplements. So if we narrow in to what, that's what I was trying to say. Oh dear, that's my menopause brain probably.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can give me something so I don't get it, but anyway.
No, look, it doesn't happen very often, but I think I try and think of 10 things at once, and I've just sometimes got to slow down. Yeah, so pretty quickly, like if I narrow the supplements down and fine tune them and say, well, you don't need that, that's superfluous, you don't need that, that's not helping you, and really finely tune what you're taking and what you're eating, and looking at, God, even things like some women just don't have enough protein, even tweaking that a little bit, or we can improve the digestion. It's as simple as having apple cider vinegar with your meals and helping you digest your food more efficiently. That's
some of the recommendations I'm telling our members already.
Are you doing that? Great. And so even little things like that in a usually a week or something that people notice with little changes like that.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. But supplements can take a bit longer. And when we're looking at hormones and say you want your hot flushes gone immediately, that usually takes a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. But hormones need some time to change, but also to stay changed. They need a few months for your body to adjust to it and to get through those cycles, because we still, even if you're not menstruating, we still have a cycle of hormones every month. And you might find you still get similar symptoms without bleeding, but you're still going through that cycle. So we need to get a few cycles to get those hormones completely balanced. So that takes some time, but immediately I've had women that text me a few days later and say, oh, I feel great already. Why is my sugar cravings gone? This is amazing. Or,
That's going to lead me to the next question, because I do have another question that says, I want to eat sugar every day. Aside from willpower, what could help me stop this desire to eat sugar every day?
Desire, well, you can stop buying it, but no, that's probably not going to help. I say to people, out of sight, out of mind, just don't buy it.
That's a big thing. Environment's a huge thing, I think.
Yeah, well, okay. So I suppose, I'm not sure who asked, but whoever asked that, you've got to look at, okay, do you crave it after each meal? Sorry, was that the question? Is it, or just every day generally?
The feeling that she wants to eat sugar every day. So outside of just sheer willpower, what else can she do to stop it?
Depends when it's happening though. So that's what I'm sort of wondering. Whoever asked, if you can just specify, because if it's happening after meals, it means that you're not breaking down glucose from your food or digesting your food properly. If it happens just constantly throughout the day, it might mean that, again, you're not breaking down your glucose, but that your body is basically not getting enough nutrients from your other food. You're not having enough, perhaps, wide range of nutrients. You're not having enough protein to balance your blood sugar levels, and your blood sugar levels are dropping dramatically. And every time our blood sugar levels drop, especially if you're having something like coffee or too much sugar, it causes more of that to happen. It causes more of a drop in your blood sugar levels more quickly. So you might say, oh, it's morning tea time, I'm going to have cake and coffee and I'll feel better. But then 2 hours later, you think, oh my God, I feel like cake and coffee again. Because what happens is your blood sugar level goes up and it spikes and you feel great. Your cortisol goes up and you feel energized. And 2 hours later, what happens is your blood sugar levels drop more than what they were originally. Then you get that cycle of, oh my God, I've got to have more, I've got to have more. That pushes you into that insulin resistance. That can take some time, but you need to get out of that cycle and keep the blood sugar levels balanced. So protein at every meal, and it doesn't have to be meat. It can be beans and legumes and nuts and seeds. It can be things like teff and quinoa that we spoke about earlier. It can be that that you need to also help it with apple cider vinegar. That helps balance your blood sugar levels and helps you release glucose from your food more slowly, and that you need more fiber to help release that glucose more slowly into your bloodstream as well. And then maybe you're not having enough fruits and vegetables and like real plant-based foods rather than grains and processed foods.
Yeah.
And it can be that you're not having enough fat even in your diet. We need fat, and nobody should be scared of having fat. I'm not saying have loads of fat, all the good fats. So we need fat to produce our hormones, which is really important, because as our hormones drop, our body really needs more fat. And I'm not, again, saying eat loads, but you need to eat lots of good fat to make sure. Don't ever try and diet and cut your fat out, because it's so important. So I try and get women to have nuts and seeds every day, particularly flax seeds. That's a great one, because it's not only high in protein, any seed's going to be high in protein.
But so just a question, I'm going to interrupt again. In terms of flaxseed, I find that an interesting one as to how do you have it? Like, I find it's just that big to chew. Like, how do you add it in? Where do you put it?
So flaxseed should be ground. Firstly, I would get organic and brown flax seeds, because there's golden. They're shown to be high in the lignans, which help bind onto your bad estrogens. That's why we suggest that one. So get them in a whole seed. Don't ever buy them ground, because if you buy them ground, they're going to be
they go off really quickly. Is that right?
Yeah, they're what we call oxidized, so they're just going to be rancid, basically. Yeah. So what you do is you buy them. You can grind them once a week in a NutriBullet or any of those sort of things. Put an airtight jar in or a container in the fridge, so the oxygen stays off of them and they stay cool. So that's the first thing. And so you would have them ground. If you have them not ground, then you'll just find that you poo them out and you don't really absorb it. So once they're ground up, you'll absorb those lignans, that's the fiber, and the fat from it. And so there's, fiber, fat, and protein. And that's what I like about flax seeds. And what they do is not only help draw in more water into your stools and make your stools nice and soft and give you better bowel movements, but they bind onto your bad estrogens as well, which is very helpful, because all of us need that any stage of your life. But so some people think, oh, flax seeds are estrogenic, but they're not estrogenic. They're something called phytoestrogens, but phytoestrogens, if you're having the healthy ones, block parts of the body where normally the bad estrogens would actually latch onto and stay there. They actually block that from happening. So they're actually getting in and doing the good stuff. Yeah. So flax seeds, you can chuck in anything. In your cereal or your, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really like that because that's something that I've always thought about but never really known what to do with it. But I've got two more questions, and I think we're going to have to wind it up then. Another question is, how do you take apple cider vinegar? How would you add that into your diet?
Oh yeah, so apple cider vinegar. Well, the most important thing to do is have it before meals. So we talked about that it helps with insulin resistance and helping you stabilize your blood sugar levels a bit more, and it sort of helps release glucose from your food each meal more slowly. So you hopefully won't get as much sugar cravings and break down your food. And it does that also by increasing stomach acid. So you'd have it just before a meal, 2 teaspoons in a bit of water before each meal, preferably. I know some people have it first thing.
Yeah,
before each meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, some people have it once a day just to alkalize, because even though it's acidic in the stomach, once we digest it, it becomes alkaline in the bloodstream. And that's what we want. We want to have foods that become more alkaline. Apple cider vinegar is great for that, becoming more alkaline, which means we reduce inflammation, which means some people find it great for joint and muscle aches and pains as well.
Yeah.
So
I'm saying that you have it before every meal. Like, so I have mine in the morning, and then I will have it on salads for lunch, and then on salads for dinner. So I'm kind of having yeah, but you can have it just like that in a cup before meals as well.
Yeah, sure. And you can overdo it. Now, just as a disclaimer, don't have it if you know that you have any stomach ulcers or stomach inflammation, esophageal inflammation or anything like that. And stomach ulcers, you'd probably know because you'd get pain. But if you haven't, and you feel just like you might be bloated or after meals, or that you're not digesting your food, or you find it really, you're going off of meat and things like that, then have it before every meal and you should be fine. Most people, unless they hate the taste of it, but yeah, water it down a bit.
Yeah. And it's not lovely, but you do it for the health reasons. There's a lot of things I do for health reasons.
Oh, okay. I think it's lovely. I love it, actually. Usually when I'm cooking dinner, because I ditch the wine, not completely, but pretty much. I don't have it very often. In the past, I was used to sometimes on the weekends sipping my wine while I'm cooking dinner. Now I sip apple cider vinegar, and it's actually.
Okay. You just did not say that out loud. I'm going to post that on my members page.
What's that?
I'm going to say that the change that people need to make is they need to sip apple cider vinegar instead of their wine.
Yeah.
I love that.
You know what I do in really hot summer days? I actually put it in sparkling mineral water.
Oh, no.
Sometimes I do lime juice instead. I'm a bit of a lime juice fan at the moment. So lime and lemon can have a similar effect, but it's not as good. It's not going to. So you can do that.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I think you're just as mad as I am. This is really good.
You've got to find some things that you really like, I think, and that's part of it, because I don't know, I love food. I would call myself a foodie, and I do love some really bad things too. I sometimes crave pizza and think, oh my God, it's been so long. But then I try and have a healthy version of it. And I do love my wine. I've always been into wine and wine tasting. But I know that's one of the best things that I've done is, I have it only once every few months now, is ditch things like wine. I ditched coffee years ago, because particularly wine, especially if we're looking at estrogen dominance and weight, that actually, one glass of wine will actually increase your estrogen dominance. Just one glass of wine. It increases inflammation. It puts more stress on the liver. And I'm not trying to be saying you have to be a saint and trying to be a party pooper, but still have some, but cut down. Yeah. So apple cider vinegar in sparkling mineral water, or lime juice, or
I love that so much. I really, really love that a lot. I am totally going to share.
Oh, good.
One last question, and I'll just double check if there isn't any other ones. But yeah, one last question. It says, I have diverticulitis where I can't have nuts and seeds. Can I have something else?
Thanks for the question. Yeah. Something else for protein. I'm not sure in what angle do you mean.
Fats, because we were talking about.
For the fats, maybe. Oh, right, yes. So I probably didn't finish that. The fat, I look at nuts and seeds. There are particular nuts and seeds that we use as well, but I won't go into that. Yes, you could have legumes, like chickpeas and black beans and lentils and things like that, and really well cooked. If you find that you get, a bit windy or bloated from it, just make sure you cook them soak them and cook them yourself and drain off all the water, just so that helps. But yeah, oily fish is really great for the fat as well. And sorry,
avocado.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Oily fish, I was just going to say, as long as it's wild caught as much as you can, just because the farmed salmon and some of that farmed oily fish can be full of chemicals as well. So try and get wild caught if you can. Avocados, absolutely, they're fantastic, fat. And then I try and get women to have coconut oil. That's a great one for energy, because we don't utilize it as like we do with other fats. It's a medium chain triglyceride, and it's burnt by the liver pretty quick, or utilized by the liver pretty quickly, and it actually increases energy and decreases inflammation in the body. And if you have enough of it, I know this sounds very weird, it will help you lose weight. And I found that accidentally 20 years ago when I started using it with my patients. I started recommending it to patients to help them with their gut health and to get rid of things like candida, overgrowth, and yeasty sort of things, because it's very antifungal. And I started having it, and I lost a bit of weight, and I just bought all these new work clothes, and I thought there's something more into this, because everybody's talking about it now, but this was 20 years ago, and I thought, oh my God, it speeds up your metabolism. This is great. So it actually, it does do that, and that's a good form of fat that you can just have cook everything in. Like I talked about those gluten-free, high protein sort of fritter things that I have. I cook that in them. If it's runny enough, I put on a salad as well, and I cook my fish or my stir fries or whatever I'm having in the evening in the coconut oil. So I'm not against olive oil, but coconut oil can give you a really good fat for energy. It's actually
that's what's going to be my next question, is how do you include it in your diet? So you're talking about with it, because there's also MCT oil, which I noticed and have just discovered of late.
Yes.
Which is, that's just a variety or a
it's so usually it's derived from the coconut, and it's high in lauric acid, and I think that's what we sort of really need, the lauric acid, which is the type of acid that helps us burn the fat. But it's just to label it rather than a saturated fat, and it is a type of saturated fat, but it's a plant saturated fat, and the medium chain triglycerides are now being promoted for energy and weight loss, because it does speed up the metabolism and reduce inflammation. Now, the only thing is that it's more processed, so I don't generally, you can take that as well, because it's processed and refined. It's not going to have some of the other benefits that an unrefined organic coconut oil does. So an unrefined organic coconut oil will also be antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. And that's what I like about it as well. So, and God, even for something like when women get vaginal dryness, or for thrush, or sort of vaginal irritation, I get them to use like coconut oil pessaries, and you need to get that pure, unrefined organic stuff to do that as well. And you can use it as a lubricant if you need to, if you're getting dry in the area, and you can put it on your skin. So you probably wouldn't want to do that with the liquid stuff that you've got. That's probably solely just for the weight loss side of it. So I'd prefer, what I'm trying to say is, I suppose I'd prefer to see people on the unrefined than that liquid. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was good questions answered. I think we'll finish it up there, but definitely this talk will appear, if we can work out the recording, online tomorrow for people to play it back, and I'll definitely add some contact details there. But thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight, and thank you so much, Kate, for being so open and giving us so much information. That was really fantastic.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining in and listening to me. Hopefully you can keep up, because I know I'm a quick talker. Actually, that was very slow for me, but yeah, no, I really loved being here, and yeah, I hope you all do very well.
Yeah, thank you. And we hope to maybe even see you in some of our sessions, Kate's sessions.
Yes, yes, I have to find some time. I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. Sounds great.
All right, thank you so much. Chat soon, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, that was great.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thanks. Now I've got to stop the recording.
Yeah. So if you shut yours down